Well, my name is George Edwards. I'm the Livestock Loss Reduction Mitigation Coordinator for the Montana Department of Livestock and the Livestock Loss Reduction Mitigation Board. What I wanted to clarify, and Eric already stole most of my spiel, but that happens, is that this is a board that's actually just attached to the Department of Livestock. So it acts under its own authority. The board only meets twice a year. The next meeting is October 18th in Helena. Encourage anyone that wants to attend. We always encourage public comment. As far as the losses go, I created a Facebook page about a year ago. You can access it at www.llrmb.mt.gov. It's a fan page, so we don't end up with blogs. But as losses occur in a county, I put it out there so that everybody knows right where the dollars are going. As far as the numbers of losses this year, the number of cattle has literally doubled in claims over last year. From January 1st through September 28th of 2009, we paid for 50 head of cattle. January 1st to September 1st of this year, we've already paid for 103 head. As far as to expound on what Eric had said, the loss in Dillon was actually 148 head total. Those folks had literally got to the point where they didn't know what they were going to do. Our program supplied them with a large payment within a matter of weeks, and that was to try to help keep them in business. Earlier today, I attended the listening session in Dillon, and I was saddened to hear that a producer over there ended up having to sell all their sheep. They just literally couldn't maintain their sheep herd with the wolves. I've also heard from people up in the Eureka area, from a gentleman that says this may be his last year in business. He's losing calves at a rate where he doesn't know how much longer he can hang on. I guess the next thing too is to go back to what Eric said. Wildlife Services literally ran out of funding in September of this year and was no longer able to fly and do control work. At that point, if they're not doing control work, that's also hitting the state program hard and the producers, because that producer cannot get the results or an action taken when he's having a depredation occurrence. As far as the money goes, I wanted to clarify something too, because I've had a lot of calls since there was a newspaper article last month about Defenders of Wildlife ceasing to provide payments. Defenders of Wildlife actually had quit providing payments to Montana ranchers in April of 2008. It's been a state program ever since. The claims that we paid in 2009, that was under state general revenue funds. We were allotted $150,000 for our biennial approach, which meant last year and this year combined, we went through $145,000 in 1 year. We did get some federal money through the tester bill, and that was $140,000. That was for a period of March 30th, 2009 to September 30th of 2011. We already have more than that loss in just a single year, let alone that time frame. So we're looking for the same thing Wildlife Services is we're trying to fund our program through federal, state appropriations, and private donations. We do have money currently to pay. I have about $100,000 in the kitty right now to pay claims, and that's until I can find another source. Our board's very concerned about the missing livestock, the opens, the pregnancy rates, fences being destroyed, but unfortunately right now due to the limited funding we have, we're only paying for death loss. And every claim that we have has been verified by USDA Wildlife Services. And in closing, I want to clarify something that seems to come up at a lot of meetings. There's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, that's Department of Interior, that's the people who brought the wolves in here. Then there's another branch of government through the Department of Ag, USDA Wildlife Services. They're the ones that do the control work that Eric was talking about. If anybody wants to know the steps that somebody needs to go through to submit a claim, I have a pile of sheets, and I'm glad to answer any questions with anybody at any point, and I'll stick around a little bit after the meeting. Thank you. And thank you, Congressman Reber.
I'm Ryan Benson from Big Game Forever. Big Game Forever is a lobbying entity that was set up by Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife, so I work with Bill Merrill on a regular basis. I am the national director for Big Game Forever. My background is I have a political science degree, a degree in zoology, and then a Harvard Law degree. I was asked to leave my law firm early this year to come work full-time on this wolf issue. SFW was an intervener in the Judge Malloy case. We will also be an appellant in that case. When I came in to work for Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife, this wasn't about a national issue. Congressman Reber, thank you for this opinion piece. I think a lot of you got this. It's worth a read. There's a mention in here about the Rebish-Conan Ranch near Dillon, Montana, who lost 120 sheep in a weekend to a pack of wolves. I just want to share a little bit more detail than what's in this opinion piece. Those 120 sheep that were lost were primarily breeding rams that had been developed, genetics had been developed over 80 years by that family. I applaud the efforts to compensate victims who lost sheep and cattle, but you cannot compensate for 80 years of lost genetics. My heart goes out to these people. This is not a limited situation. The numbers from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service indicate that 35,000 cattle, sheep, horses, dogs have been killed by wolves since 1987. Mention was made by the USDA efforts to remove problem wolves. 1,300 wolves have been killed through that program. And still, wolf populations continue to explode. I'd like to commend Congressman Reberg. He reached across the aisle to Democratic Congressman from Texas, Chet Edwards. And he said, Congressman, we're not on the same side of the aisle, but we're on the same side of this issue, and I'd like to work together. That was not the end of that kind of bilateral support. Congressman Matheson, another Democrat from Utah, reached out and said, I support H.R. 6028, which returns control of wolves to the states. The position of Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife is that we support H.R. 6028 as amended. I think Governor Freudenthal, Democratic governor from Wyoming, said it best in a letter that he wrote to Senator Reid September 28, 2008. Sorry, 2010. It seems that H.R. 6028 is the most effective avenue to finally put this very divisive issue of full federal wolf management policy to rest. And then he goes on to say later in the letter, for my part, I cannot support any legislation that would delist only certain portions of the United States wolf population. Eric, you made an interesting comment. You said, we need to keep this out of the courts. That's exactly what 6028 does. Okay? Now, many of you may not know this, but Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife had the votes last week to get this through Congress. Okay? We had the votes to get it done. We had the commitments from the right people. There's one bill that was going to pass between now and the election, and that was called the CR. It's a bill to keep the government running. We had a bunch of Republican senators that reached across the aisle and said, even though our leadership has told us there will be no amendments on the CR, we are going to join with the Democrats and add wolf delisting. It was a done deal, okay? We had the votes, we had the commitment. Senator Tester, who has never yet once agreed to meet with us, unlike Congressman Reber, unlike Senator Baucus. He was there at the 11th hour to kill that bill. Okay? So, our position is that next year we have another opportunity to get this done. A bunch of senators from many western states have already dropped a Senate version of 6028. We support that effort. There are the votes to get it done. We would encourage every senator who cares about state management of wildlife to join us in this effort. Now, wolves are here to stay, okay? So let's stop talking about the eradication of the wolves. Wolves are here to stay. Their populations will remain healthy. None of us want to go back under the endangered species list. Michigan's wildlife director, who according to the wildlife director from Arizona is the smartest wildlife director in the U.S., she said, "How can you protect a common animal and hope to keep any faith in the Endangered Species Act? The wolf recovery will never be a success until states are managing wolf populations." That's our position, and we'll continue to fight to get it done. Thank you.